Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and we are continuing with the Batman films. So today we are doing the 1997 action sci-fi crime comedy Batman and Robin. Here is your trivia question for today. What does Batman use to win the auction over Poison Ivy? The answer will be at the end of this video. We are once again back in Gotham City, where both Batman and Robin are working together to save the city. Batman's alter ego, Bruce Wayne, has apparently decided to do plastic surgery once again and look very different. Bruce Wayne also has another new love interest in this film as he goes through them like tissue paper, and her name is Julie Madison. Dick Grayson, on the other hand, is still flying solo in the love department, although that may change as a new girl has just recently come into his life named Barbara Wilson, and she just so happens to be Alfred's niece. Now, unfortunately, they make the bad decision of allowing her to stay at Wayne Manor, because of course she won't be able to figure out what Batman's secret is. Now, it is a Batman movie, so of course there are villains, and one of those villains is Mr. Freeze, who is attempting to freeze the entire city as he is mad that he cannot save his wife, who is apparently dealing with a disease called McGregor's syndrome. Now, at the same time, down in South America, there's a mad scientist named Dr. Woodrue who works for Wayne Enterprises and is using a serum to turn a normal man into a muscle-bound freak named Bane. Now, the original creator of this serum is Pamela Isley, who works along with Dr. Woodrue, and it was called Venom, and it was supposed to be used to allow plants to defend themselves. But Dr. Woodrue decides that he wants to keep it for himself, so he tries to kill her off. Now, as we've learned from Batman Returns, when you try to kill off a seemingly unattractive young woman, she's only going to come back stronger, sexier, and more powerful. And Pamela takes on the new persona of Poison Ivy, and then she and Bane head off to Gotham City. Oh, and you remember that very rare disease that Freeze's wife has? Well, apparently Alfred has it as well, and now he's dying. He also apparently had the wherewithal to make a bat suit for his niece, because we all knew she was going to figure out the secret. So Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy of course team up along with their henchman Bane, and now that the odds are evened with the Bat family, will they be victorious? Joel Schumacher comes back as the director for this film, although I'm sure he wish he didn't because it did end up being a huge flop. What's interesting is Marvel's Kevin Feige actually considers this the most important comic book movie ever made. Due to its utter failure, it caused film studios to rethink how they made comic book movies and how they were presented. The fake disease in this movie is called McGregor's syndrome, and it was actually named after the producer Peter McGregor Scott. The original plan in the script was to actually have a love triangle between Pamela Isley, Julie Madison, and Bruce Wayne. Also, the secret identity of Poison Ivy and Pamela Isley being the same person was going to be kept up until the end, where Bruce Wayne puts both of their pictures randomly into the Batcomputer and they end up having a match. Julie Madison was also going to have a much larger role, and Poison Ivy was going to end up killing her with a blade. This is why she has that same blade as she's attacking Batgirl, but they felt this was too dark. They did toy around with the idea of Barbara Wilson being Barbara Gordon, but for some reason they felt that her and Pat Hingle just couldn't pass as father and daughter. Also, once they settled on it being Barbara Wilson, the original idea was that she was not going to be Alfred's niece, but instead the daughter of Alfred's childhood friend, and she would just think of him as an uncle. The original title for this fourth film was actually going to be Batman Forever, because the last film was called Forever. Val Kilmer did not come back for this film as he was working on the movie The Saint at the time. Schumacher felt that George Clooney could be Batman due to his performance in From Dusk Till Dawn. Once filming for Batman and Robin was over, Clooney actually said, "I think we just killed the series." He's even been known to refund people who have told him that they saw Batman and Robin in theaters. Clooney also turned down an opportunity to star in a Green Hornet movie to be in this film, and it's not the Green Hornet one that would eventually come out in 2011. Other actors that were up for the role of Batman were David Duchovny, William Baldwin, and Kurt Russell. Chris O'Donnell once again plays the character of Robin slash Dick Grayson. Now, what's interesting is his costume in this film is based off of the costume that Dick Grayson would later have as he would become Nightwing. And the reason for this is if the movie had done well, O'Donnell would have gotten a spin off movie called Nightwing. There was actually quite a few scenes with Batgirl in it that were cut from the final film. The reason for this is Alicia Silverstone gained a few pounds during production and couldn't actually get back into the suit. Apparently, the press found out about this weight gain and gave her a really hard time. Luckily, director Joel Schumacher defended her. Now, I will also say, though, with that information aside, I do feel that Alicia Silverstone did a very poor job of acting in this film. Some other actresses that also could have been Batgirl were apparently Olivia d'Abo and Jennifer Love Hewitt. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who plays Mr. Freeze in the film, also wasn't amazing, but he was at least very entertaining, although he did have 27 different ice puns throughout the movie. Schwarzenegger also got paid $25 million to be in this film, which was apparently the largest salary an actor had ever received up until that point. Other actors who could have been Mr. Freeze were Ed Harris, Patrick Stewart, Hulk Hogan, Sylvester Stallone, Anthony Hopkins, and Christopher Lloyd. This movie also has two actors that would go on to become governors: Arnold Schwarzenegger in California and Jesse Ventura in Minnesota. Uma Thurman's another one where the acting wasn't great, but it was still very entertaining. As for who else could have been Poison Ivy, Julia Roberts, Sharon Stone, and Demi Moore. I do have to say, it was cool to see Bane in a movie, but they absolutely ruined his character from the comics. And the worst part is the wrestler Jeep Swenson, who played him, actually died 2 months after the film released. Kane Hodder was apparently also up for the role of Bane. You may know him as he's played Jason in quite a few of the Friday the 13th movies. John Glover plays the character of Jason Woodrue, who in the comics actually becomes a villain known as the Floronic Man. Also, John Glover voiced the Riddler in Batman the Animated Series. Elle Macpherson plays the first live-action version of Julie Madison, who was actually Bruce's first significant love interest in the comics. Julie Madison is also the only love interest from all four movies to not figure out that Bruce Wayne is Batman. Corey Haim makes a cameo in this film as a member of the biker gang. Vivica A. Fox also makes a cameo in this film as she appears as the character Miss B. Haven. Coolio also makes a cameo in this film, and there is a rumor that he actually may have been the Scarecrow in the next film. Speaking of sequels, had Batman and Robin done well, there was plans for a fifth movie that was either going to be called Batman Triumphant or Batman Unchained. Apparently the plan was to have both Batman and Robin back, but possibly not Batgirl. As I mentioned, the main villain would have been the Scarecrow, and possible actors for that role were Nicolas Cage, Jeff Goldblum, and Steve Buscemi. Apparently, there would have been cameos from the other villains from the past movies, as they all would have been hallucinations from the Scarecrow's fear toxin. Harley Quinn would have been the secondary villain in the film, and instead of being the Joker's lover this time around, she would have been his estranged daughter, and possibly played by Courtney Love. There was also talks of Man-Bat being a third villain in the film, and Martin Short playing the human version before he changes. Two other films that would have been greenlit if Batman and Robin had succeeded were live-action adaptations of Batman Year One and Batman Beyond. The first Batman film is the only movie in this series to have one villain. Batman and Robin is the only movie in this series to have all of the villains survive by the end. In the first film, Joker falls to his death. In the second film, Penguin also technically falls to his death and then gets a penguin burial at sea. Max Schreck is electrocuted and turned into a crispy critter. And in the third film, Two-Face falls to his death as well. The fourth film is also the only movie where all of the villains don't know that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Batman specifically tells Joker who he is. Catwoman, Penguin, and Max Schreck all see him get unmasked, and the Riddler and Two-Face find out who he is by scanning his brain. There are two types of people you really don't want to be in a Batman movie. Number one is someone's boss, as each of the movies has a villain kill their boss, and you also don't want to be a henchman, as in each of the films, one of the villains kills one of their henchmen. Batman and Robin is the only movie of all four films that doesn't end with Alfred driving back to Wayne Manor. Batman Forever is the only one of the four films that doesn't mention Beauty and the Beast. Joker mentions it to Vicky, Penguin mentions it to Catwoman, and Batman mentions it to Robin. Bob Kane, who helped create Batman the comic book series, is married to Elizabeth Sanders Kane, who appears in Batman Returns as a Gothamite and Gossip Gertie in both the third and fourth films. Although that's not as impressive as Pat Hingle and Michael Goff, who appear in all four films as Commissioner Gordon and Alfred. One of the gangs at the motorcycle drag race is supposed to look exactly like the gang from A Clockwork Orange. The outfits for both the Riddler and Two-Face from the previous film can be seen in the lockup at Arkham Asylum. So when it comes to the film Batman and Robin, it's definitely not a very good movie, but it is very entertaining, so I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. And as for the trivia question from the beginning of the episode, what does Batman use to win the auction over Poison Ivy? He whips out his Bat credit card, which apparently is good through forever. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.